Hello and welcome to Theatre.Reviews with Paul Seven. I'm here at the Noel Coward to see Dr Strangelove. I don't know what's more spectacular, the production of Dr Strangelove or Steve Coogan's triumphant appearance in it as 4 different characters. He's hardly ever off stage and he generates most of the laughs. The script has some flaws, but these are far outweighed by the overall enjoyment gleaned from this magnificent show. Keep watching and I'll tell you all about Steve Coogan in Dr Strangelove. But first, please like, comment and subscribe to this channel. You may be wondering whether a film made in the 1960s about how a nuclear war might be triggered stacks up as a comedy for today. Well, it does creak occasionally, but it is funnier and more relevant than you might expect. I'll return to that later, but more to the point is that Dr Strangelove is a vehicle for the powerful comic acting of Steve Coogan, who follows in the footsteps of the film's star Peter Sellers in playing multiple characters. It deserves an award for stamina, as well as any others he will undoubtedly accrue. The action starts at a US airbase in Britain. The hut interior with its massive Venetian blinds just waiting to be disrupted is the first of a series of great sets by Hildegard Bechtler, who also designed the set for the current production of Oedipus. We meet the first and possibly the best of 4 brilliant characters created by Steve Coogan. He's RAF Captain Mandrake, shocked that the US commander has launched an unauthorised nuclear attack on Russia. It's a masterpiece of British reserve, politeness and beating around the bush in the face of the utter madness of General Ripper, played hilariously by a cigar-chomping, carpet-chewing and suitably square-jawed John Hopkins. Next, we are in a huge war room with a massive electronic map, or big board as they call it, dominating the scene, showing targets as circles, squares and squiggly bits. Here, a panicking mix of politicians and military men have gathered in response to the worrying news. Mr Coogan is the level-headed US President Muffley, surrounded by warmongering generals, led by an excellent Giles Terera as General Turgidson, maintaining a stiff military stance but always on the verge of jumping up and down with childish excitement. Also in the room is Russian Ambassador Bakov. The amusing names keep on coming. Played by Tony J. who disintegrates from swaggering confidence to paralysing fear as he realises his fate is in the hands of his unpredictable and possibly mad leader. There's some excellent sleight of hand when Mr Coogan changes to Dr Strangelove, a former German scientist now masterminding the US nuclear response. He holds down his arm to prevent it making Nazi salutes, always with a reassuring, "I hated that," while clearly looking forward to a new Reich. Mr Coogan plays down the German fanatic stereotype, which makes his explanation of the logic of having automatic responses to the use of nuclear weapons without human intervention, and his casual description of the consequences of a nuclear holocaust, as chilling as they are funny. The third set cleverly recreates a bomber plane. The fuselage and land below are recreated impeccably, although I'm not sure how visible it would be from the back of the stalls. Sitting in the cockpit with 2 other members of the crew is the pilot, Major T.J. Kong, played again by Steve Coogan. You know, it takes some chutzpah to put yourself up for comparison with the great Peter Sellers, but it turns out it really is difficult to say who's better, Sellers in the film or Coogan on stage. Mr Coogan certainly deserves an extra credit for playing all these parts in the course of 2 hours. Like Mr Sellers, he's an actor first before being a comedian, so he avoids going for the obvious laughs, which could be gained from exaggerating the accents and mannerisms and other clowning around. Instead, he takes the characters seriously and allows the humour to come out of the situation, making it all the more believable and funny. And by the way, that's a clue to where the script goes awry, but I'll come to that in a minute. Steve Coogan outdoes Peter Sellers in one respect. Steve Coogan outdoes Peter Sellers in one respect, and that's by taking on a 4th role, which the star of the film was unable to do owing to an injury. Again, it's a priceless performance he gives as Major T.J. Kong, when the pilot reverts to cowboy mode. Despite objections and obstacles, he's determined to carry out the mission, But can he be stopped? A code that will cancel the bombers is essential, but Steve Coogan, back as RAF Captain Mandrake and in possession of said code, has trouble trying to phone the president because of the lack of change. This leads to one of the funniest scenes as he tries to persuade a US soldier to shoot open a vending machine. To the American, vandalising Coca-Cola property seems a more serious offence than causing World War III. Now, this stage show has been adapted by the great Armando Iannucci and Sean Foley from a 1964 film that satirised the military strategy of so-called mutually assured destruction. The idea that if all the major powers were armed with nuclear weapons, they wouldn't attack for fear of being destroyed themselves. Now, at the time, hot on the heels of the Cuban Missile Crisis, people were actually preparing their bunkers for the possibility of a nuclear war. 60 years later, it hasn't happened. Not that that makes Dr Strangelove a nostalgic trip down memory lane. I mean, yes, CND, the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, is barely mentioned these days, and we have become more concerned about the destruction of the planet through pollution and the climate crisis. But the reality is that nuclear weapons have proliferated, making the danger of a country or dictator or even a terrorist group using them greater than ever. And with an aggressive Putin in power in Russia and an unpredictable president due to take over the US nuclear codes, not to mention nuclear weapons at the disposal of Israel, Pakistan, North Korea, and before long, who knows, Iran, this is a timely reminder that it only takes one or two psychopaths with their fingers on the trigger to desolate the world. Dr Strangelove imagines two such madmen, and the players are all men, setting off a potential nuclear war. In doing so, it exposes fundamental flaws in the macho culture and logic of war that has led them into this corner. So the US generals talk of pre-taliation based on the assumption that an accidental attack by them will trigger retaliation and they will need to get in first. It's satire, but it bites deeply into the fanaticism that comes out of the dehumanisation of the opposition. It's not a musical, but it begins and ends with a chorus line of military personnel dancing to popular songs, the opening number being the most aggressive version of Try a Little Tenderness I've ever heard, and ending with Vera Lynn, played by Penny Ashmore, singing with equal irony the sentimental World War II song, We'll Meet Again. The one-liners come thick and fast. You can't fight in here, this is the war room. And thanks to director Sean Foley, the pace rarely lets up. The only problem is that the plot is entirely centred around the question of whether a nuclear war can be prevented. With no subplots or diversions, the humour, never subtle and already dated in parts, becomes predictable after a while. I mean, you can only take so many jokes about redneck Americans and the madness of war. Fortunately, Steve Coogan is magnificent, creating 4 very different characters and showing perfectly how the best laughs come from taking comedy seriously. He looked exhausted by the time the curtain came down. I give Dr Strangelove 4 stars. I hope you enjoyed this review, or at least found it useful, and if you did, then please like, comment and subscribe to this channel, then you'll be the first to know about my future reviews. You can read my reviews at Theatre.Reviews, where I also round up the reviews of other critics on the latest London shows. And you can follow me on some of the social media. Thank you for watching.